I would like to hand it over now to my good friend Art Fusco for what we like to call the historical anchor. This is where he will go over a historical point that is relevant to what we are discussing and tie it all into how we will discuss it after the commercial break in our panel discussion. Art, please take us on.
Thanks a lot, Apollo. And so today's historical anchor is basically law enforcement militarization. And I'm starting in 1877. So when Reconstruction ended in 1877 with Republican Rutherford B. Hayes taking the presidency as part of a great compromise, Democrats wanted something in return. So the Posse Comitatus Act was signed in 1878, which prevented the federal government from using the military to enforce domestic laws within the states.
Can you repeat that again? Hold on.
So what it's about is it's a law that prevents the federal government from using the military to enforce domestic laws within the states because they were doing that in the southern states after the Civil War. Okay. And that's how that was their idea of Reconstruction, bring in the troops and make them change. But there was a compromise. The Southern Democrats were tired of the federal troops occupying their states since the Civil War. And so this act would leave the South to their own affairs once again. Okay. And it was around this time when like the black codes and the vagrancy laws began taking place in the South. Okay. And if anyone would like to know more information about the Jim Crow era or the Civil Rights era, Apollo and I actually produced a video earlier this year called Black America. And it's on YouTube. You can go onto the Alfred Longo Foundation YouTube page or my personal YouTube page, Art Fusco. So you can go to that. But let's go ahead and fast forward to the 40s and 50s. Training videos from the 1940s and 50s suggest that police were trained to engage the public much differently than they do today. Specifically, they were non-militaristic. They were much easier to approach. Not so scary looking.
Kind of like on the Andy Griffith Show.
A little bit, yeah. Those were the days when there was traffic cops and vice squads. So during the time they were equipped with 6-shooters or 9mm or baton, handcuffs, vest and a shotgun, maybe some nunchucks.
Maybe.
Yeah, and that began to change in the 60s. In April of 1965, the Hub Jewelry and Loan Company that was in downtown San Diego was robbed at gunpoint. The gunmen killed the store owner and then camped out in the building, shooting it out with police who were outgunned. And the standoff lasted for 4 hours and ended when a Navy sailor arrived with a flashbang grenade. Okay. Right? He came from the base with a flashbang grenade, and with police permission, he detonated it in the store. Afterwards, an officer came in with a shotgun and shot the gunman. Okay. That happened the same year as the Watts riots. So after the Watts riots specifically happened, an LAPD officer named John Nelson, who had been part of a special task force in the Vietnam War, suggested that they create a unit similar to the task force that he'd been a part of. Okay. And it was originally supposed to be named the Special Weapons and Attack Team. But that didn't sound very friendly, so they replaced "and attack team" with "and tactics," giving birth to Special Weapons and Tactics, SWAT.
That's the SWAT team.
Yeah. So this was clearly a case of officers coming up with a solution that only made things worse, however.
So the idea of SWAT was basically developed in the state of California?
It was LAPD.
LAPD?
Yep.
They're the originators of the SWAT team.
LAPD are the originators. And after that, it spread like a wildfire. So none of this helped when Nixon became president and started the war on drugs in the 70s. And then Ronald Reagan in the 80s signed the Military Cooperation and Civilian Enforcement Agencies Act in 1981, which allowed them and police and the military to exchange information, tactics, and supplies. So the DoD also had a program that transferred old and new military equipment to police as well. That's where you get like the tanks and a lot of the other equipment.
Armored mobile vehicles.
Yeah. So that's basically the
air tanks.
Yeah. And that's basically it. That's the anger.
Whew.
What happened, and then in 1997, there was another shootout in Hollywood where the officer got outgunned.
Definitely remember that
The
one.
Hollywood shootout.
Yeah.
And that was another catalyst for people to adopt SWAT teams and stuff like that. Until we're here.
They robbed a bank right in Hollywood.
Yeah,
and
they
they're the
robbed
ones
the
that
bank.
had all of the.
They had all of this. They had all
Kevlar
this.
vests, head to toe, basically.
They had all this armor-piercing bullets. They injured 18 people,
Wow.
and the only ones that were killed were the gunmen themselves.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely remember that for one. I watched that live actually in 1997.
Yeah, I didn't know anything
Oh,
about it
snap.
until I started researching everything.
Do you remember all that?
North Hollywood?
Huh?
Yeah, you talking about North Hollywood?
Yeah, the shootout. in
I
North
was in it.
Hollywood.
I'm a South Central.
Oh my goodness! Welcome South
Born and
Central. Wow.
raised.
I lived in Inglewood for about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Not too long ago, so I got a lot of love for that.
Yeah, no, I was there, and it was horrific. I mean, I remember just from the black community perspective, we were just praying they weren't black, because it was going to be an all-out war. We had already dealt with, alongside Latinos, the Rampart Division, and all of their corruption that was sanctioned until there was a whistleblowing. And that came out because officers from Los Angeles at that time looked just like criminals. And so they were doing a lot of things that were criminal, and they were getting away with it. There was a lot of homicides and deaths and injuries to citizens by officers, confiscation of things that belonged to people, their property they never received back because they were stolen. And so those things were clear. When the North Hollywood incident happened, I remember, watching on the news, because everything was live, that the officers actually had to go to a gun store.
Yeah. And they actually confiscated a lot of weapons because they were outgunned. They needed the weapons.
Yeah, they did. The owner actually gave it to them, knowing that it was more of like a promise they would pay. And
I hope they did.
I hope they did as well,
They probably
because
returned them.
they may have returned them, but I'm sure that he had a hefty bill, and but they were outgunned, and it was a very horrific scene, and citizens definitely were injured as well. And so this is something, from my perspective, where we definitely need someone who's going to be able to fight people like that, because this was just out in the open. They were shooting at everything.
Yeah.
The helicopter, they were shooting at people, women, children. There was no regard for life.
Definitely. So
they were there to fight.
We do have an understanding that when things do get pushed to that limit, even the human beings that might have certain views towards police can come to an understanding and say, yes, they might need that. But exactly. But where are the limits that do we stop that at? What is too far?
Yeah, we have to have limits.
What is too far?
And that's what we're here to talk about.
Should we allow them to apply it to any random situation? Should you treat a situation in a neighborhood where peaceful people are protesting the same way as the North Hollywood shootout?
And I agree with you that we should not. There should be a process and a protocol for that.
Definitely. Well, we'll talk about that once we return back from the break. Thank you very much for listening.